before Christ, 1200 to 930 BC. We're in the book of Judges, and we are almost to the end of Judges. We will next follow by Judges with Ruth, which will be always, you know a little bit about it, but it's like so much of what we've studied so far. We think we know, but we find out we don't know nearly what there is to know about it. And I think that's the story in Ruth. However, we need to finish Judges as complicated and plotted as it is. Gideon has been the ruler now of the Israelites, and they have been, what they've been doing is actually purging all these little towns and kings that God told them to do. He told them to do that beforehand, and then they didn't get it all done, and now they're trying to clean up. And they go to all these little villages, which are all these names and these kings, and it's somewhat tedious to go through it. I admit to you. And so really, where we are now is at the end with Gideon's death, which is at the sort of halfway down on the right of the page, Gideon's death. And it says, thus Midian was subdued before the Israelites, did not raise its head again. During Gideon's lifetime, the land had peace 40 years. If you notice so far in all of these books of the Bible we've gone through so far, of all of these great people in the Bible, God likes to have written down how many years of peace there were after someone was there. Moses, they had so much peace. All these people had Joseph, there was peace. There was Gideon, so that's Gideon, 40 years. Then it goes on to say, Jerubbaal, son of Joash, went back home to live. He had 70 sons of his own, for he had many wives. His concubine, who lived in Shechem, also bore him a son, whom he named Abimelech. Also bore him a son, who he named Abimelech. Now that's important to remember. It was his concubine who bore him a son, Abimelech. And Gideon, son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of his father Joash in Ophrah of the Abzerites. No sooner had Gideon died than the Israelites again prostituted themselves to the Baals. Here we go again. This happens every time, doesn't it?
Yep.
Every time they have a great leader. God gives them a great leader. Moses, he gives them a great, all through the Old Testament. He gives them a great leader. And then when that great leader dies, after years of peace, the Israelites decide that they get what I call happy feet. They decide that they need to have somebody in charge and they can't wait on God. There's a great a song that they use in some sort of healing services and things, wait on the Lord. Mm-hmm. We've had it here. Wait on the Lord, wait on the Lord. They don't want to wait on the Lord. The Israelites are terrible at waiting on the Lord. Only worse than who? Us. We're terrible at waiting on the Lord.
Yep.
And you are watching on TV, we're all terrible at it. And so here we are. Here's the death of Gideon. And they couldn't wait till he was almost cold in the ground. No sooner had Gideon died, it says, than the Israelites again prostituted themselves to the Baals. They set up Baal breath as their god and did not remember the Lord their God, who rescued them from the hands of all of their enemies on every side. They did not remember the Lord their God. Now remember, too, that none of this was in writing and that they handed this down via storytelling from person to person to person to person. There is another great group, well, they're not so great anymore, but they were, who did it all via storytelling, person to person, mouth to ear. And what was that group? The Masons. The Masons have one book where everything is written down in Washington, D.C., It's sealed down in a tomb, and every word in that is passed along to Masons and has been for, well, since the 40s, and brought over from England and then changed to our language, of course. And it has been in that, and it has been taught mouth to ear, all these times. There's very little, I mean, there's some things written down in books, but very little of importance that is not handed down. I wonder if they got this from there, I don't know. But we got it from England. So it says they'd forgotten who God. They also failed to show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon. They didn't show any. Once he was dead, they were done with him, these Israelites, in spite of all the good things he had done for them. This was the Israelite people. It's important to keep these people and how they did things in mind as we continue to go forward, because how they did things in those days affects how things are done now. And the Israelites now, we call them the Jewish people, of course. So now it comes to the story of Abimelech. That's in chapter 9. Abimelech was the son of Jerubbaal, went to his mother's brothers in Shechem and said to them, to all his mother's clan, ask all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, to have all 70 of Jerubbaal's sons rule over, or just one man? Remember, I am your flesh and blood. It's kind of like running for president. This is the guy saying that I'm the guy for you. I'm the one you should follow. Now, the question is, did God send him or not? And the answer to that is no. No, God did not send him. All these other great people, God has raised them up, but not in Abimelech's case. When the brothers repeated all this to the citizens of Shechem, they were inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is related to us. They gave him 70 shekels of silver from the temple of Baal Berith, and Abimelech used it to hire reckless scoundrels, thugs, who became his followers. He went to his father's home in Ophrah, and on one stone murdered his 70 brothers, the son of Jerubbaal. He killed his 70 brothers. But Jotham, the youngest son, escaped by hiding. He'll come back to us. And all the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo gathered beside the great tree at the pillar of Shechem to crown Abimelech king. Well, I guess so. He'd killed everybody. When Jotham was told about this, he climbed on the top of Mount Gerizim. He shouted to them, listen to me, citizens of Shechem, so that God may listen to you. One day the trees went out to anoint a king for themselves. They said to the olive tree, be our king. The olive tree answered, should I give up my oil, by which both gods and humans are honored, to hold sway over the trees? Next, the tree said to the fig tree, come and be our king. But the fig tree replied, should I give up my fruit so good and sweet to hold sway over the trees? Then the tree said to the vine, come and be our king. But the vine answered, should I give up my wine, which cheers both gods and humans, to hold sway over the trees? Finally, all the trees said to the thorn bush, come be our king. The thorn bush said to the kings, if you really want to anoint me king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, then let fire come out of the thorn bush and consume the cedars of Lebanon. The cedars of Lebanon, have you acted honorably and in good faith by making Abimelech king? Have you been fair to Jerubbaal and his family? Have you treated him as he deserves? Remember that my father fought for you and risked his life to rescue you from the hands of Midian. But today you have revolted against my father's family. You have murdered his 70 sons on a single stone and have made Abimelech, the son of his female slave, king over the citizens of Shechem, because he is related to you. So have you acted honorably and in good faith towards Jerubbaal and his family today? If you have, may Abimelech be your joy, and may you be his. But if you have not, then let fire come out from Abimelech and consume you, the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo. And let fire come out from you, the citizens of Shechem and Billo, and consume Abimelech. Then Jotham fled, escaping to Beer, and he lived there because he was afraid of his brother Abimelech. After Abimelech had governed Israel for 3 years, God stirred up animosity between Abimelech and the citizens of Shechem, so that they acted treacherously against Abimelech. God did this in order that the crime against Jerubbaal's 70 sons, the shedding of their blood, might be avenged on their brother Abimelech and on the citizens of Shechem who had helped him murder his brothers. And as opposition to him, these citizens of Shechem set men on the hilltops to ambush and rob everyone who passed by. And this was reported to Abimelech. So now, God, after 3 years, has stirred up the people to go against Abimelech, to take him down because he killed his 70 brothers and because he got power by the wrong way. And then it says, now Gaal, son of Ebed, moved with his clan into Shechem, and his citizens put their confidence in him. And after they had gone out to the fields and gathered the grapes and trod them, they held a festival in the temple of their God. While they were eating and drinking, and cursed Abimelech. Then Gaal, son of Ebed, said, who is Abimelech, and why should we Shechemites be subject to him? Isn't he Jerubbaal's son, and isn't Zebul his deputy? Serve the family of Hamor, Shechem's father. Why should we serve Abimelech? If only his people were under my command, then I would get rid of him. I would say to Abimelech, call out your whole army. So here comes someone else who's saying, we shouldn't pay any attention to him. He's basically the son of a whore. That's what they're trying to say here. And look what he's done to everyone. So what we need to do is make me king, and I will then take care of this little matter for you. And it says, when Zebul, the governor of the city, heard what Gaal, son of Ebed, said, he was very angry. Under cover, he sent messengers to Abimelech. And it said, his clan have come to Shechem and are stirring up the city against you. Now then, during the night, you and your friends should come and will lie wait in the fields. In the morning at sunrise, advance against the city. When Gaal and his men come out against you, seize the opportunity to attack them. So Abimelech did all this. They did all this. Now Gaal, son of Ebed, had gone out and was standing at the entrance to the city. Just as Abimelech and his troops came out from their hiding place. When Gaal saw them, he said to Zebul, look, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains. Zebul replied, you make the mistake. You mistake the shadows of the mountains for men. But Gaal spoke up again, look, people are coming down from the central hill, and a company is coming from the direction of the diviner's tree. Then Zebul said to him, where is your big talk now? You who said, who is Abimelech, that we should be subject to him? Aren't these the men you ridiculed? Go out and fight them. So Gaal led out the citizens of Shechem and fought Abimelech. Abimelech chased him all the way to the entrance of the gate, and many were killed as they fled. Then Abimelech stayed, and Zebul drove Gaal and his clan out of it. The next day the people of Shechem went out into the fields, and this was reported to Abimelech. So he took his men, divided them into 3 companies, and set an ambush in the fields. When he saw the people coming, he rose to attack them. They rushed forward and positioned at the entrance of the gate. Then 2 companies attacked those in the fields and struck them down. All that day Abimelech pressed his attack against the people until he had captured it and killed its people. Then he destroyed the city and scattered salt all over it. On hearing this, the citizens in the tower of Shechem went into the stronghold of the temple of Erberith. Well, when Abimelech heard it, and they had assembled there, he and all his men went up to Mount Zalmon. He took an axe and cut off some branches, which he lifted to his shoulders. He ordered the men with him, quick, do what you have seen me do. So all the men cut branches and followed him, and they piled them up against the stronghold and set it on fire with the people still inside. So as Abimelech had them cut these branches, they took them to this tower where the people were. They put them there. They lit them on fire and burned everyone up. Then he went to Thebes and besieged it and captured it. In the city, however, was a strong tower to which all the men and the women fled. Abimelech went into the tower and attacked it. But as he approached the entrance to the tower, set it on fire, a woman dropped an upper millstone on his head and cracked his skull.
Justice.
Smart girl.
It's always the girls.
Right? He's so here's get this in your mind. Abimelech goes to this tower to attack the last group, and a woman throws down a millstone and it hits Abimelech on the head and cracks his skull.
She had it.
Hurriedly he called to his armor bearer, draw your sword and kill me, so they can't say a woman killed me. So his servant ran him through and he died. When the Israelites saw that Abimelech was dead, they went home. Thus God repaid the wickedness that Abimelech had done to his father by murdering his 70 brothers. God also made the people of Shechem pay for all their wickedness. the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, came on them. So, the life of Abimelech is now gone. He was struck by, after he had murdered people, he had burned them to death, he had killed 70 people, he had done all these terrible things. God had this woman drop this millstone on him, and it cracked his skull, and then he didn't want to be known as a person who was killed by a woman, so he had his servant running through, and the servant did it. So now, that's all done. Everything's been avenged. What's next? Chapter 10. Now it says, there's a group of people now we're going to hear. Tola, who led Israel for 23 years, and then he died. And then Jair was followed by Jair of Gilead, who led Israel for 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode donkeys. They controlled the towns in Gilead, to which they are called Havoth Jair, which Jair died. He was buried in Canaan. Then Jephthah also did it. Again, it says, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They served up the Baal and Asherus and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of Ammonites, the gods of the Philistines. And because the Israelites forsook the Lord and no longer served him, he became angry with them. He sold them into the hands of the Philistines and the Ammonites, who that year shattered and crushed them. For 18 years they oppressed all the Israelites on the east side of the Jordan and Gilead. And it goes on and on to say all that. And then we turn the page, and it says, the Israelites did what? You've heard it.
Cried out to God.
That's right. Cried out to the Lord, it says, we have sinned against you, forsaking our God and serving the Baals. So now they have admitted. They've done it again. After all these people, they've done it again. The Lord replied, the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Maonites oppressed you, and you cried to me for help. Did I not save you from their hands? You have forsaken me and served other gods, so I will no longer save you. Go out and cry to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you when you're in trouble. Now, do you think that God will ever do that to us?
Oh, please no.
I'm asking, do you think that God will ever do that to us? Will say, you've already served these other gods, so go be with them.
It seems like he's already done that.
It says he'll turn them over to a reprobate mind eventually.
Well,
Won't
he
continue
also
forever.
he also gives us what?
Salvation.
Free will.
Yeah.
Free will. He gives us free will. So then it says, but the Israelites said to the Lord, we have sinned. Do with us whatever you think best, but please rescue us now. They got rid of the foreign gods and served the Lord, and he could bear Israel's misery no longer. So he got tired of hearing them whine, and he came back and he saved them again.
Yeah.
When the Ammonites were called to arms and camped in Gilead, the Israelites assembled and camped at Mizpah. What does Mizpah mean? We've said it many times in here.
Many times?
We have said it many times. Mizpah. I even told you the movie that it was in. You remember any of that? Well, all right. Go ahead, Don. I'm giving you the
No,
opportunity.
I don't remember exactly.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Okay.
That's
So Mizpah
once
is a
in
Jewish.
lifetime.
Mizpah is a Jewish saying. It says, may peace be between you and me.
I knew the
The
peace
word
part.
was Mizpah.
I knew the peace
And
part.
in World War II, it was used as a password among certain people. Mizpah was used as a password. And there was a movie called Stage Door Canteen that you should have watched by now, that you all would like because you all know about World War II. And there was a woman in there who was saying goodbye to a soldier who had to go to the front, who had been in the Stage Door Canteen. And she said, Mizpah. She took his hand and said, Mizpah. And he says back, may peace be between you and me.
Oh.
Mizpah. Okay. Again, we'll have a test on that later. And then it says, Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty warrior. His father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife also bore him sons. And when they were grown up, they drove Jephthah away. You are not going to get any inheritance in our family, they said, because you are the son of another woman. So Jephthah fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a gang of scoundrels gathered around him and followed him. So do you see a pattern here at all? Do you see a pattern? We have these men who are the sons of the prostitutes, their father's mistresses. Over and over and over this happens. Have we not seen it now several times? These men, and they go off, and they're mad and they're bitter. Who would be the biggest one of all of these? Who would be the biggest one of all? Who was one he had a brother and who sent him off to live somewhere else because the wife wouldn't let him live there. And it started what is now the Mideast War.
Ishmael.
Ishmael.
And who?
Isaac.
That's right. Y'all remember that now?
Yep.
Isaac and Ishmael. That's the Mideast War. Is because when the mother of Isaac said to her husband, who had had a child by the handmaiden, remember that she said, I can't have a child. You can go ahead and sleep with my handmaiden.
Yeah.
And he did, and had a son. And then the Lord did what he said he would do and make her with child.
Yeah.
He gave her a son, and the son was Isaac. And the handmaiden's son was Ishmael. And she said, he can't live here any longer. You've got to get rid of him because we now have a true son.
A real son.
A real son. Remember all that?
So this was all started by Sarah.
That's right.
No, by Rebecca.
Well, it was, no,
No, Abraham.
Abraham's wife, Sarah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah.
Sarah started.
But it was
A lady.
it was started
A
too by, remember that it was started by not just Sarah, but by her husband,
Abraham.
Abraham. Because he went with the plan.
He was henpecked.
He went with the plan.
Because he didn't man up and do his job.
They didn't know. None of that is right. Stop it. That is not right. The reason that this happened was that they lacked one thing that we've talked about again many, many times. What is it we most lack here at this parish, that churches lack in America, that people lack all around the world? You're going to hear it again today in the sermon. Faith. Faith. And they did not have faith that God would keep his promise.
His plan.
We do not have faith that God's plan will come to fruition. We do not have faith that God's promise will take place, that he will take care of us. There's an old hymn, God will take care of you. Remember that hymn? Anyway, no, you don't.
No, I'm too
Well,
young.
Sarah followed in the footsteps of Eve.
Yes.
Who also
But
had a
all
husband who
of
didn't
them-
man up and do his job.
Okay, stop it. Stop it. Not everybody can hear over here that you are talking. Abraham and Sarah did not have faith that God would give them the child that he promised them. So Sarah got happy feet, and she said, sleep with my maid,
Yeah.
and that way we'll have a son, a son, maybe. And then Abraham said, okay, sounds good to me, because I don't have any faith either. So he did. Because what was more important than faith to Abraham? Sin, lust. That's why we will go over the Decalogue today again.
Again.
Because we let ourselves, what did the Israelites always do? They didn't have a leader, so they got a false god. We always have little faith, oh ye of little faith, and then we get these people to be our leaders, and they are to have no faith. If you don't believe it, look at the presidents of the United States, some of them, the last few. Look.
Yeah.
Look. We have people who have no faith. We have people who aren't even Christian. How is it that in a country based on God, we elected non-Christian people to be president of the United States? It is an awful thing. Barack Obama's not a Christian. He's a Muslim.
Yeah.
But let's not get all carried away with that. I'll say that from a sermon on patriotism. But I'm just saying, we have to put these things in the right perspective. It is a lack of faith. If you want to go back, let's go back to Adam and Eve. You want to go back to Adam and Eve? God said, you can do anything in the garden you want except eat from the tree of good and evil, of knowledge and good.
Knowledge of good and evil.
Good and evil.
Yeah.
Do not eat from this tree.
Don't touch it.
Don't be
No,
anything.
he didn't
He didn't say don't
He
touch
said
it.
can't
That
eat
was the
from it.
devil's lie.
He can't eat it. You can't eat from it. You can do everything else. I've given you all this wonderful, it's all magnificent. This one tree. But what happened? When Satan came, who had no faith? Eve. And then she calls upon Adam and said, look, and who had no faith? Adam. It was a sin of faith. Most sin, I hate to say this to you, well, I don't hate to. Come on in. Thank you for setting all that up.
No problem.
Most sin, the basis of most sin is lack of faith. If you listen to the Decalogue today, when we go, it's called rehearsing it. When we rehearse the Decalogue, think everyone, but if we had faith, but if we had faith, but if we had faith, every single one of them. Most sin is caused by a lack of faith. When we turn to God's not just we, when other people, when the Israelites, when people turn to gods that are made of man, when they put the gods of man ahead of the gods of God, of the faith of God, they have lost faith in God that He will provide their every need. So they go out and get things that they think God will not provide. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? We all have been guilty of that from time to time.
It's just sad that he chose an apple tree.
Well, that could be. I haven't given that any thought, but John, I guess it's better than an orange tree. I guess.
I could take a tree.
But he did, and maybe that's because that's what snakes like to crawl through. I don't really know about that, but good point. Anyway, we're talking about the fact that for you all that came in, that the Israelites continually, when they don't have, they've had now, we're past Gideon, we're past 3 or 4 more people who've been ahead of it all, and they were 23 years, 22 years, and then as soon as they ran out of good leaders that God sent them, they always return to these man-made gods, Baal. And when they do that, things go poorly for them. And when things go poorly for them, they do what? They cry out to God to save us. It says it, cry it out. You just read it, cry it out to God. The sin is that they turn to Baal. That's their sin. They don't have faith. They don't have faith that God is going to send them someone else. They don't have faith that God is going to take care of them. So they turn to the first little old god that comes along, and they call them all Baal. That's just a name. They call them all Baal, and then there's a mess. They usually get attacked by other people, and they get persecuted. It said 18 years they were persecuted just now. We read that by a group, and then they call out to God, and He says, "But you always choose the wrong thing." This is how they start. You always choose against me. Look where you are. I'm tired of saving you. Just go your own way. This is, of course, before He sent His Son, Jesus Christ. I'm tired of saving you. I'm tired of cleaning up your mess. That's what He's really saying. Go your own way. They said, do with us what you want. Please save us from this problem. And it says there in your Bibles, He got tired of hearing their misery, them whining. So He saved them, and now He has sent them someone else. And, it is over and over the fact that they didn't have faith that He would send them someone else in the first place. All they had to do was wait. There's that song we were talking about when you were going, wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. You know that song. It's a Taizé song that they use in Taizé a lot. Wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. But they just couldn't. Just like Eve couldn't, there wasn't enough It's like there wasn't enough really in the Garden of Eden to make you happy. You had to go to the one tree. And because you had no faith, that God had told you that you would be happy here, and He gave you everything you needed, gave you children. All this went on. And remember this, that when Eve had children, there was what? No pain in what?
Childbirth.
That's right. There was no pain in childbirth. Huh?
I said, gee, look what she did.
That's exactly right. If you want to blame somebody, don't blame us. Don't blame when you're holding on to your husband's hand and screaming at him, you're never going to touch me again. That's not his fault. That was Eve's fault because she ate the apple, and then that caused sin. And when sin came, that caused pain. Just saying. How about that?
Keeps the doctor away.
Apple.
That's right. Well, in this case, it did not. It brought the doctor. Yes, it did keep the doctor away. You're right. Kept the doctor away, but it sent pain your way. So now they have Jephthah. He was a mighty warrior, and his father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. We talked about that several times. That just to catch you up, that there were all these people who. That's how we started talking about Sarah and her maid servant that slept with her husband Abraham, which started the Middle East war, which is really what started the Middle East conflict. You know that war. So every time you look through here, we find some prostitute who has been the mistress. Really, mistress is a better word, because they were not hidden, they were not secret. They were they were given a place to live, and they were the mistress of, and everybody knew it. I mean, it wasn't a secret. And so, I mean, people who have multiple wives. We just talked about Gilead, Gilead or someone who has 70 children. 70 sons. And somebody came along and had to kill them all on the stone.
Had to.
Had to do it. Had to do it. Because they didn't have what? Faith. That's right. So, anyway, there's throughout Scripture, and so far in our Scripture reading of the Old Testament, there has been this pattern of these people who have had mistresses who have had illegitimate sons. And the illegitimate sons are always treated as illegitimate sons. And when that happens, they are sent off. And when they go off, because they're not the true son that's going to inherit, they surround themselves with people who are not the best people. It says here, sometime later, it says, Joseph fled from his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a gang of scoundrels gathered around him and followed him. Or a gang of scoundrels. And sometime later, when the Ammonites were fighting against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to Jephthah from the land of Tob. Come be our commander so we can fight the Ammonites. Jephthah, now it's okay to have a prostitute, son. Jephthah said to them, didn't you hate me and drive me from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? The elders of Gilead said to him, nevertheless, we are turning to you now. Come with us to fight the Ammonites, and you will be head over all of us who live in Gilead. Jephthah answered, suppose you take me back to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gives them to me. Will I really be your head? The elders of Gilead replied, the Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them. And he repeated all the words before the Lord in Mizpah. We talked about Mizpah. What's the word Mizpah? Remember it?
You and me.
We talked about
Peace
it.
between you.
Peace between you and me. It was a password in World War II. Peace between you and me.
Like that.
It was, not between everybody, between Jewish people. It was a Jewish word. It was a password to know that they were getting with somebody who was safe, And so he repeated all the words before the Lord. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the Ammonite king with the question, what do you have against me that you have attacked my country? The king of the Ammonites answered, when Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from Aaron to the Jabbok all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peacefully. And then Jephthah sent back messengers to the Ammonites king saying, this is what Jephthah says, Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of Ammonites. When they came up out of Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and on to Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, "Give us permission to go through your country," but the king of Edom would not. They also sent also to the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. As they traveled through the wilderness, skirted the lands of Edom and Moab, passed along the eastern side of the country of Moab. They camped on the other side of Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was its border. Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, "Let us pass through your country to our own place." Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through his territory. He mustered all his troops and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. Then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and his whole army into Israel's hands, and they defeated them. Israel took over all the lands of the Amorites who lived in that country, capturing it from Arnon to the Jabbok, from the desert to the Jordan. Now, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people Israel, what right have you to take it over? Will you not take what your God Chemosh gave you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? For 300 years Israel occupied these places surrounding the settlements and all the towns along the Arnon. Why did you not retake them during that time? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. The king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message Jephthah sent him. The Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. He crossed Gilead and Manasseh, passed through Mizpah of Gilead. And from there he advanced against the Ammonites. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, "If you give me the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me, when I return in triumph from the Ammonites, will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." And Jephthah went to fight over the Ammonites, and the Lord gave them into his hands. He devastated 20 towns from Aor to the vicinity of Minnith, as far as Abel Kerim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. When Jephthah returned home in his Mizpah, who should come out to meet him but his daughters dancing the sound of timbrels? She was the only child. Except for he had neither son nor daughters. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh no, my daughter, you brought me down, and I am devastated. I've made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." "My father," he replied, "you have just given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you have promised, now that the Lord has avenged you out of your enemies, the Ammonites. But grant me this one request. Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry." "You may go," he said. He let her go for 2 months. She and her friends went into the hills and wept because she would never marry. After 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin. From this comes the Israelite tradition that each year the young women of Israel go out 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. He killed his daughter. Because he had promised to God that he would give whoever came out first. Did you not catch that? He did. And so then it goes on, and it's going to tell more about all of these things, and we're going to get, and then after it goes through all of these people, and then it comes out, and then in chapter 13 we will begin again with the birth of Samson, and that's another whole story, Samson. And you've heard that song, "Whoa, Delilah." Anyway, that's not. So that's it for today. We have gone through almost to the end of Judges. Samson is really the end of Judges. We'll do that next week, and then we'll be able to go from Judges into Ruth. Ruth is a great story, and will be fascinating for us to talk about. So we'll learn a lot from her.